Humiliating, screeching U-turn that wasn't a U-turn by the government yesterday, announced just exactly 24 hours ago right now to basically renege on that axing of winter fuel payments to all but the poorest pensioners on pension and credit, and they're returning it to, well, 3/4 of pensioners, although those who have an income of 35 grand a year or more will no longer get it. Let's talk to Mark Littlewood. He's Director of Popular Conservatism and joins us as he regularly does. Good afternoon to you, Mark.
Afternoon, Julia. Good to be with you.
So this U-turn that wasn't a U-turn, was it the right and sensible thing for the government to do?
Well, politically, I think they had to get off this particular hook. They were getting absolutely whacked in the polls, doing appallingly in local elections, lost the Runcorn by-election. And I think it's worth looking back, Julia, to the original justification they gave for this move. They sort of said, look, we really don't want to do it, but this is an absolute necessity to stabilise the economy. I think one cabinet minister even said if they didn't do it, there'd be a run on the pound.
It was so laughable, wasn't it? I mean, and it was pretty much the first major announcement from the Chancellor. It was within, I think, 3 weeks of her taking office. And everyone just went, what?
Yeah, extraordinary. So it wasn't well thought out either. I think I've put to you on this programme before, Julia, that I think if they wanted to get rid of winter fuel allowance but claw some of it back, they should have just wrapped it into the state pension.
I've always said
this. Higher taxpayers obviously pay back more in tax than those who are lower taxpayers. That would have been the smart way to do it. What's particularly bizarre here is I think having concluded that they couldn't make this stick, that they were going to have to get out of it, I think in their shoes, I mean, I wouldn't have started from here, but I would have U-turned completely. Why not just scrap the whole policy, go back to what it was, rather than sort of pretending you've still got a new policy, which I think on most estimates now, on the face of it, will save about £250 million. That's chump change in terms of government accounts.
But the other thing
when
also,
you build it, the admin probably saves nothing.
Well, again, there was always a reason why it wasn't means tested. This whole, millionaires shouldn't be getting this money. No, they shouldn't. But there's a reason why they did. It's because the cost of means testing, all the admin, all the staff, all of that, and the risk of people who need it not getting it. And again, they were happy for that to happen after they introduced their policy last July. Actually, you may as well just give it to the small proportion of pensioners with a higher income. And I know everyone goes on about all these millionaire pensioners. They've got a house that's increased in value, most of these people. They're not sitting on their yachts, for goodness sake. But there are those who are rich. But you know what? Giving them an extra 300 quid, we're not going to really notice it. A, there aren't that many of them, and B, they're paying tax on everything, and they've contributed a lot of tax. Yep. It is not the thing that is going to make the weather of our economy. It's a load of nonsense, isn't it? But here's the thing. I mean, the key thing here is that, like, they've already committed that money. They said they were going to save, wasn't it, £2.5 billion? But they haven't. So it's a tiny fraction, or £1.5 billion, sorry. But they've already committed that money. And Rachel Reeves, when she made the announcement of pretending it was because they've sorted out the economy, which I think we'll get on to next, she didn't say how it was going to be paid for, because the money that they supposedly saved has already been committed elsewhere.
Yes, that's true. I mean, but it's also right. This is a fairly trivial amount of money, right? So
in the big scheme of things.
In the big scheme of things, sort of whether the growth rate is 0.5% this year or 0.7% this year is probably more important in terms of tax receipts and therefore balancing the books. So I've got a little bit of sympathy that you can look at everything in the round rather than saying, well, exactly how are you paying for this 5 million or exactly how are you paying for that 200 million. That's reasonable. But your wider point definitely stands, Julia, that the state of the public finances is pretty dire. And I think for those of us who were sceptical about this winter fuel payments change in the first place, OK, well, this is now a billion or so not saved. Where are we going to find some savings? And there is a bit of a danger in our public debate at the moment that absolutely every area of government spending is a priority. And if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So, you know, where are we going to find not a few £100 million of savings, but potentially tens of billions of pounds of savings to get remotely close to balancing the bill?
As you know, there are always going to be efficiency savings, which never actually seem to appear ever. And again, they're always going to cut civil servants, which never seems to ever happen, although maybe those 300 who complained about the Gaza policy will actually fall on their swords and resign. And that would be not a bad thing for everybody. Also bad news today, the joblessness rate ticking up from 4.5% to 4.6%. That's in the 3 months to the end of April. Payroll employment has also fallen sharply. Jamie Jenkins, who used to work at the office Office for National Statistics, who's been great at sort of cutting through the figures, identifying, it's a city the size of Manchester that have been paying the cost of all all their taxes have gone towards paying for the asylum seeker hotels. But he also pointed out that payroll jobs dropped by 109,000 in May. It's the biggest monthly fall since lockdowns. 274,000 fewer jobs right now in our economy than a year ago. A lot of people are putting that down to, yes, we've got world confidence, yes, we've got issues with the trade tariff war and all of that, but we've also got the small factor of national insurance hike for employers, which is passed on to employers, minimum wage rise. Great thing if you're on minimum wage, but actually it means that the cost of hiring someone, keeping someone on, is massively hit. 274,000 fewer jobs than a year ago is not a growing economy, is it?
No, that's right. And I think I'm right in saying, Julia, that every single Labour government in history has left office with unemployment higher than when it came into
the point Russell made, yeah.
Exception. And look, I mean, colour me unsurprised here. Look, the general state of the economy is pretty poor, but it's a basic, very simple rule of economics that if you make something more expensive, people will consume less of it. And the government has chosen to make the cost of labour more expensive, both through the minimum wage hike and through
the issue that no one, it would appear, I mean, no one can add up and do basic maths in this government, it would seem, but also no one's run a business. Now, they always talk about these ghastly sort of Tory, millionaire, business people in cabinet and things, but, might actually understand the notion of profit and loss. Well, it seems to me that when they're handing out pay rises to train drivers, again, there's an argument for pay rises to nurses and doctors when there's a shortage of them working in the NHS. That's an economic argument about supply and demand. There's no shortage of train drivers. Why would you be giving them a 70 grand a wage packet when there's no shortage of people who probably do it quite happily for half the wages? It is quite bizarre. They don't seem to have any understanding. I've seen ministers and people saying, and advisors saying, well, when people were not hiring and when they were letting people go earlier in this year, they were saying, but the national insurance hike hasn't even hit yet, and it's on employers, not employees. Why would that impact workers? You think that people who run businesses don't make any decisions until April the 6th about what they're doing on April the 7th? I mean, that's terrifying that they don't understand this basic stuff.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I should also say, with a background in economics, it makes no difference whether you put the charge on the employer or the employee.
It's the cost of employing someone.
Yeah, if we clip 10% off from the employer rather than the employee, or do it the other way around, you are still putting the cost of labour up. And the business judgment is it worth X pounds to employ this person? And if it is, you'll employ them. Now, if you make the hourly rate of employing them that bit more, X plus 5%, X plus 10%, there'll be a good number of businesses that conclude that particular person can't be justified on the payroll anymore. It's completely unsurprising.
But again, if you only work in the public sector, you have never had to make this sort of decision. Let me find, because I know we don't have you for very long. I want to ask you about the announcement from Ed Miliband, £14.2 billion extra to go on a new nuclear reactor. Now, I mean, I'm all in favour of this because I think it's a really, really, really good idea. We have some sort of a backup for when the wind don't blow and the sun don't shine, where we're going to be so madly reliant on these renewables. But this is for Sizewell. We know that the cost of Hinkley C, reactors there, I mean, I think 4 times what it was supposed to cost. We spend a fortune on things. Why is it that A, we don't build these power stations of any kind, B, when we do, it takes ages and decades, and Z, when we actually do it, it ends up costing 4 times as much as it does anywhere else?
Yeah, all very good questions. I mean, I can barely think of any major government project that doesn't overrun the budget.
HS2.
So if they say it's going to cost, a certain amount, I don't know, double it, treble it, probably to get a more realistic estimate. My real worry here, Julia, is we're in danger of having an energy sector in Britain in which every single part of it is either subsidised or banned, right? So we're either subsidising nuclear power or wind power or solar power, or we're banning drilling in the North Sea or banning fracking. It would be far better, in my view, to let the market do its business, within reason. You've got to make sure it's not dangerous what's being undertaken, rather than the taxpayer being on the hook for this. I mean, Ed Miliband crowing that this will create 10,000 new jobs. That's an abysmal rate of return for £14 billion investment. Absolutely pathetic. So far, far better not to have an energy secretary deciding where we're going to get our energy from, but for the energy secretary to set the framework and then say to the private business, bring your own money forward. If you think you can make a small modular nuclear reactor work with Rolls-Royce, good luck to you. but you'll have to find the investment. If you could think you can drill better in the North Sea, good luck to you. Here's your license. Instead of that, we've got a sort of state-controlled sector here, which makes private investment nearly impossible because of the uncertainties.
Yeah.
Far, far better to tap into the energy sources that are there, are cheap, but are presently being banned.
Martin Littlewood summed it up very nicely, Director of Popular Conservatism. Thank you very much indeed.